Hello and welcome to the Dream Team Professor Podcast. My name is Scott, and in this episode, we're looking at the top players to target in Game Week 5 Sun Dream Team. So we're going to start off by looking at the fixtures. We're going to go through all of the top teams and players to target this week. We'll go on to captaincy, and then we'll round off with my team update and transfer plans at the end. So we'll start with a fixture ticker from not only fpl.co.uk. That's rolling off the tongue a bit better. Previously, ffstuff.co.uk. So this week, I think it's an underwhelming game week. I've said it on my pod last week. I said it on the Dream Team Tonic podcast earlier in the week. I don't like the look of this game week 5. I'm recording this on Thursday morning, so we still have got some Champions League matches still to play, which seems bizarre on a Thursday, but it's how it is. But game week 5 just doesn't look great to me. So we have the teams that are in Europe in the Europa League will be doubling. So we have Forest and Villa both doubling. You also have the Champions League teams and some of the Carabao Cup sides doubling too. But the problem is, I think a lot of these Champions League sides that are playing their first Carabao Cup match will rotate heavily. I'm looking at every possible outcome for these teams that play in the Champions League, and I just don't see any reason why any of them are going to go particularly strong in this one. You then have Carabao Cup sides that double with the Premier League as well as that. It's Brighton, Fulham, Wolves, Everton and Burnley. So we'll run through them just a little bit first to show you why I feel this way. But we'll look at, obviously, Liverpool first. So Everton at home, Southampton at home. So Everton at home in the Prem, Merseyside derby. Obviously, they're going to go strong for that one. But then Southampton at home, there's a good opportunity to rotate a lot of the squad there. There will be some players that potentially do end up playing too and could be nice to target. And there could be some still strong players there with the likes of Isak getting his first start yesterday against Atletico Madrid. Will he start Everton? Will he be ready to start Everton? I'm not so sure, but maybe it's another chance for him to get some minutes in the legs. But overall, I think it's going to be really hard to predict who is going to get 2 games out of that. Arsenal and City both play each other in the Prem this week, so the full focus is going to be on that massive game at the weekend. But then after that, City have Huddersfield away and Arsenal have Port Vale away. But Arsenal now have the depth to pretty much put out a full separate 11. There might be 1 or 2 players that are fortunate in Dream Team sense to play 2. But overall, I think there's going to be wholesale changes for Arsenal and the same for City. You have got some sort of fringe wingers that do quite well that you could get lucky with. But are you going to bring them in for the Arsenal game? Have them possibly sit on the bench to then try and get the Huddersfield game? I don't particularly like it personally. You've got Newcastle. They've got a double of Bournemouth away and then Bradford at home. Now, again, they're sort of starting to build up a bit of a squad as well, Newcastle. I think there'll be still wholesale changes there. And it's Barcelona this evening for them as well. So Barcelona into Bournemouth. Bradford looks like a nice time to have a rest before they go on to play Arsenal in Game Week 6. Chelsea, we know, have got an absolutely humongous squad. They play Manchester United away in the Premier League, and then it's Lincoln away from home in the Carabao Cup. I'd imagine that's going to be another round of 11 changes possibly for Chelsea. Aston Villa, so we're coming to the team that plays in Europe this week. So they are obviously in pretty poor form, haven't scored in the Premier League, did finally score in the Carabao Cup before they got eliminated by Brentford. But they do have Sunderland away and Bologna at home. Now, whether you think they look like favourable fixtures anymore the way Aston Villa have been playing, you imagine they are going to play their strongest 11 in pretty much both of those matches. So I think Villa, while the form isn't there, they are there to target this week if you do want the 2 games. And then Fulham, Feyenoord, Burnley after that. Again, theoretically, good fixtures to target. Spurs are in really, really good form since Frank took over. It's Brighton away, which is always a tough game, but I think Spurs are looking impressive at the moment. And it's Doncaster at home. Then long-term fixtures look good again. Wolves, Bodo, Leeds. Brighton, Spurs and Barnsley. Real big squad again at Brighton. So I just don't see it personally. Nottingham Forest. Now, they are one that we would potentially be interested in, with Burnley away from home and then Real Betis away from home in the Europa League. The issue is we kind of don't know what Ange's best 11 is. So they played in the Carabao Cup yesterday against Swansea, played pretty much an entirely different 11. I think it was 10 of the 11 that started against Arsenal, but they got eliminated. So they didn't really give a great account of themselves. So we're still kind of working out what will be the best 11 for Nottingham Forest. But there are still a few players who we think would typically start both games there. So I think there is opportunity still with that. Burnley away, Betis away, Fulham, Brentford and Cambridge. You could get lucky there, but do they need to put out a very strong 11 for that second game? Again, I don't think so. Now, these two are potentially interesting. So Wolves, Leeds at home, Everton at home. On paper, decent enough double game week. And you'd think they'd want to go fairly strong against Everton in that Carabao Cup. They obviously will in the Premier League against Leeds. A good opportunity for them to turn around what's been a pretty poor start. So Wolves, maybe you'd think that they go a little bit stronger. And then Everton, Merseyside derby in the Prem, and then Wolves away from home in the Carabao. They went relatively strong in the last round, but again, there will still be a few changes for Everton. And then lastly, Burnley with the double, Nottingham Forest at home and Cardiff at home. But do we want to be targeting Burnley? No offence, Burnley fans, but I don't think I'll be going for Burnley players this game week. So for me, overall, looking at this game week, it kind of feels a little bit like stick to what you have. If you have fires to put out this week, injured players, for example, then by all means transfer them out. And if you do want to focus on your team value, you've got players going down quite heavily in price, then maybe you do want to move to someone and try and get those price changes. But I think if you are going to try and make a move this week, it's either going to be for Villa or Forest, or it's going to be someone that you want a bit longer term. Because if you look at game week 6, that is when all of the European teams double at the same time. They are going to be synced up again now. So I would be looking to make transfers with possibly game week 6 and further in mind. Before we move on to players to target, please hit that like button, subscribe if you're not already, and if you really want to support the channel, apparently there's a new hype feature on YouTube, which is for smaller creators to get a bit more discovery, called hype. And apparently if you swipe to the left a little bit, there should be a hype button. You get free hypes to use per week, and it's to support emerging creators. So if you want to try that out, I'd be interested to see what that does as well. So completely free. Hit that hype button if you can see it. But let's move on to the top players to target this week. Now, on to Liverpool. So they are last-minute wonders at the moment. So they had their 1-0 against Burnley. It wasn't the smashing that I kind of felt like it probably would be. And it's Salah again with another late return. So in this game, obviously people were coming out of it. If you weren't a Salah owner or you was a Haaland captain, maybe team, you'd be probably looking at Salah and going, that is lucky. That is lucky. I know he is a 90-minute man. He's a penalty taker, so there's always a possibility. But yeah, the fact that he keeps getting these attack and returns late on did feel rather fortunate, I must say. But if there was any doubt going into this Atletico match, I think that has kind of been wiped out. So Salah again was really quiet in the Burnley match. And a few of us might have been thinking, is he really worth the money? I think Slot probably had the same doubts as what we might have had, or maybe not doubts, but thoughts of how to get the best out of him. And they definitely did that against Atletico. So goal, assist against Atletico, 3 shots on target, 2 big chances created, and loads of action down that right-hand side. He saw so much more of the ball compared to in some of the previous games. And he looked electric yesterday. So 16 points for him in that one. Obviously, the penalty goal in the Burnley game as well. So that's left people with Salah feeling a lot better. And people without Salah probably wondering, how are we gonna get him in for game week 5? One thing that is different for Liverpool is that Isak got his first start. Now, I wasn't expecting this one. Slot did sort of hint he would be playing a part in this game. But yeah, I didn't really expect him to start. It was his first start. He played 58 minutes. It was okay. It was okay. I didn't see anything that was like, I need to get him right now. But Slot said after the game he was fitter than expected, but he's not ready for 3 games a week yet. So what we're going to do about Isak going into game week 5, Everton at home and Southampton at home, my guess would be that Ekitike goes on and starts as per normal for the Everton game with Gakpo and Salah. But I do feel like maybe there is a chance now that Isak goes on to start the Southampton game. He chatted a bit, Slot, and sort of said that he sees both Ekitike and Isak predominantly as centre forwards, but that Ekitike has previously played off the left when he was younger. So yeah, maybe we see Isak starting as that centre forward. I do think that Rio Ngomora plays left wing for the Southampton game, so I don't think TK plays left wing for that one. But there will be a slot on the right hand side because I imagine Salah won't play it. So it will be interesting to see what that Carabao Cup lineup is. I'm still not inclined to make the early move to get Isak in. He said he doesn't think he's ready to play 3 games a week yet. So I think probably a start and a sub appearance is fair enough. But yeah, is definitely one to watch. So game week 5, if you're on Gakpo, if you're on Ekatike, I think you would still keep them in the hope that maybe they do get a fortunate start in the Southampton fixture, or maybe even a sub appearance and do some damage. But I think Gakpo, Ekatike, just keep hold of them for game week 5. Virgil van Dijk, he's the only other one I'm going to sort of bring attention to. So there was rotation across the back line in that second fixture. So you had Kirkes was swapped for Robertson, who grabbed the goal himself. Rather fortunate one that sort of came off a Salah free kick. So Kirkes, again, not entirely nailed in these doubles. You had Szoboszlai, I think, started the right back in the Burnley match, and then Frimpong went on to start right back for this Atletico match. Maybe that is partly what played into the hands of Salah being more action on the right-hand side, maybe having Robertson on the left-hand side instead, and then having Frimpong down the right, maybe sort of pushed more of the ball down that side. But whatever it did, worked for Salah. But Virgil van Dijk is the constant in this Liverpool defence. 5.3 million. Grabbed a goal. Another late goal for Liverpool in the 92nd minute. He can pop up with these throughout the season. He is a threat from corners. But is he worth 5.3 million? So a 17-point week. That is worth 5.3. But there are some really, really strong defensive options at the minute from Spurs, from Arsenal, who are quite a bit cheaper than that. So I think he's always a decent option. But I think personally at the moment, I still don't fancy getting him in my team for 5.3 million. Szoboszlai last week, I think it's fair to say that I wasn't really keen on him. Playing at that right back position. I know he got the goal against Arsenal from that free kick. We know he is good at set pieces. I just wasn't feeling the idea of having a sort of centre mid, playing at right back, for example. But he did get an assist in this game. He got 3 bonus points, 11 points, assist. So if he isn't playing at right back, he might just go straight back into midfield, and he is in form. So maybe eat my words a little bit on that one. Maybe Szoboszlai is a decent enough pick, but still not one that I'm rushing to get in my team. Man City, so they do still have a match to play tonight against Napoli, but they were good against Manchester United. And so was Erling Haaland, 18-point monster haul. So as a Salah captainer, he came out of that Burnley match feeling a little bit relieved. But it did feel like it was still advantage Haaland going into United game. And it was. He got 2 goals in that one, and he could have had so much more. So 3 shots on target, and could very well still end up better off than Salah after this evening. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But 5 goals, 8 shots on target so far this season. He is looking seriously good. And I would say that if you haven't got him, I'd still get him in for game week 5. The Arsenal away fixture, I know, is probably the toughest defence you're going to come up against. But if he is on track for a price rise, you're going to want him before game week 6. You may as well pay for him, I think, now still. And he scored in both of the fixtures against Arsenal last season. So I think I would still just find my way to get Haaland in this week if I didn't have him already, because you'll be paying more. Doku, 3.7, got 2 assists in this game. So 11 points for him. He got his regular bonus points. More likely, he normally gets sort of 3 bonus or 5 bonus even. Doku, he's a bonus magnet, but he's got to get more consistent starts before we start picking him, I still think. And I do think they should be picking him, to be honest, because he was really, really good in this game. But I wouldn't move on him yet. Phil Foden, 4.8 million, got a goal. It was his first start of the season. Only 16 minutes before that this season. So he has been on and off, in and out of the team. And that still makes me a bit worried about going early on Phil Foden. And the fact you could get lucky. The ideal scenario would be to get, I think, Arsenal and Huddersfield, obviously. But I think it's very unlikely, the fact he hasn't played that many minutes. I think he probably starts Arsenal. And then I'm not sure against Huddersfield. If he could end up not starting Arsenal and then starting Huddersfield, you'd be chuffed with that. I don't think I could go there yet, just in case it's an Arsenal away match and then nothing from the Huddersfield game. But he has played in that false 9 position previously in competitions like the Carabao Cup when Haaland is given a rest. So it's possible. But at 4.8, I think it's still a wait and see for me. Vardiol was back playing at centre-back. I do wonder whether we might start to see him at left-back at times, and that is where he performs really, really well on Dream Team. Ait-Nouri's now out for 5 weeks. They did have O'Reilly playing at left-back, who done an okay job doing that last season. But again, at 5.5 million, I think there are more reliable options currently, or more reliable defences for that price. So wait and see on Vardiol, see where he plays, see how he performs. But City did look a little bit better at the back. And I think that kind of will be partly down to the signing of Donnarumma at 4 million, who, again, he's just a beast in goal. He's huge. He's dashed my dreams so many times, either against Arsenal in the Champions League or up against England, I think in the Euros. So I just hate seeing him in goal, to be honest. He's such a good goalkeeper. One to keep an eye on. Maybe we've got a bit more budget in the team, but I think he's going to have a really good season for Man City. On to my team, Arsenal. So it was a pretty straightforward win against Nottingham Forest. I kind of felt like it might be. Ange didn't really have any time to implement his system, and he didn't particularly try to. I think he kept things relatively the same. But then the win against Bilbao, I think, was impressive. So I don't think Arsenal were particularly great in that game, but they did weather the storm and then come on and win the game with some late changes. So I think solid week for Arsenal. But I do expect this week, Man City at home, full strength, Port Vale, full rotation. I've been trying to sort of look at what I think the team will be for that Port Vale match, because if there is anyone that might end up playing too, it could be a nice one to target. But I look at the strength on that bench up against Bilbao. So Kepa, you'd imagine, goes straight in goal. Lewis Skelly, you'd imagine, goes at left back. He's played nowhere near the amount of minutes I thought he was going to play this season. I thought him and Calafiori would be rotating a fair amount. Calafiori's injury record has been a bit sketchy in the past. I know a lot of Arsenal fans are a little bit worried that he keeps playing so many minutes, but it seems like that's going to be the way going forward. Trossard off the bench in a couple of games and getting attacking returns, 2 attacking returns in this Atletico Bilbao one. He deserves to play more minutes, but again, I don't think he gets in our first team in a minute. So Port Vale for him. Wanyeri, Port Vale. Norgard could easily start Port Vale. Obviously, Setford wouldn't because Kepa would play, but Dowman definitely plays. Martinelli, that's the question mark. Does Martinelli get favoured for Manchester City the way he was for Liverpool, or do we trust Eze again? So Martinelli, possibility of both. And then Hincapié, we'd like to see him get a start. I think that's going to come at Port Vale. And then Saliba on the bench as well. This is a really, really strong bench. Saliba, you could argue, maybe comes in and starts the City game, or he's just getting minutes in the Port Vale game to build back up, because the backup in Mosquera has been so good since making his debut against Liverpool. So Arsenal, I'm going to start with Gyökeres. 3 goals in 5 for him. The only thing we have a little bit of doubt on at the moment is his minutes. So he's been getting sort of 65-ish minute subs. I think he's just building his way up, and I think Arteta's probably protecting him while Kai Havertz is still out injured. So no real concerns there. I think that Gyökeres will get the 90 against Man City, unless he really is flagging, and then a full rest for Port Vale ahead of Newcastle the week after. But I don't think this is the week to go for Gyökeres. Madueke is interesting. So he has really made a lot of Arsenal fans eat their words, including me. I don't think people had a real problem with the actual signing of Madueke. They had a problem that it was the first signing at Arsenal. We were desperate for a striker. We were desperate for a winger. And then to see Madueke be the first signing through the door, it just triggered a bit of panic, I think. But he has been very, very impressive, standing in for Bukayo Saka. Max bonus against Forest. He's taking really, really nice in-swinging corners off the right-hand side. So against Forest, it was a real surprise to see Declan Rice actually rested, but we do have the squad to do it now, so maybe that's something we have to factor in to Arsenal later in the season, that Rice maybe isn't immune from rotation now with the squad we've got. But Madueke took right-hand side corners against Forest, but you did think maybe Rice comes back in and takes all the set pieces again. No, Madueke done a good enough of a job. He carried on taking them in that Bilbao match. So 12 points for him for the week. I think he looks an exciting option. We just don't know when Saka is going to be coming back and taking that right wing spot. So it is always a little bit of a risk. Eze, really, really impressive against Forest. Got his first return of the season with an assist. 10-point game week for him. He was quiet in the Atletico Bilbao match. But one thing I would take away from Eze, I'd say less sort of PPM bonus than he was getting against or for Crystal Palace. Like over the course of the season when he has played for Arsenal so far, hasn't really racked up the PPM like he has been. And I don't think so much of the ball is focused over his side. Both matches have been much more heavily down the right-hand side. But something else that has kind of been noticeable is that left wing is definitely where Arteta sees him playing, for now at least, because there's been opportunities in both games for Eze to possibly go into that midfield role. So you had Ødegaard going off injured. Could Eze have just gone into midfield and a left winger gone on? But no, Nwaneri comes on. Then the lineup for the Atletico Bilbao match, maybe you thought there was a possibility of that, but no. We went for that solid midfield of Zubi, Marino, Rice. And then, again, opportunities to sort of change the game round with Trossard and Martinelli coming on. But instead of Eze moving into midfield, they just take over those left wing spots from Eze. So quite a game in the second one. But I still think he's going to be a solid pick going forward. Again, do you want to do it for City? Probably not. Defensively, doesn't feel the week to be targeting Arsenal. When the fixtures first come out, it didn't look like fixtures to target Arsenal defence, but they just keep keeping clean sheets. 4 clean sheets in 5, only 1 goal conceded, which was that absolute screamer from Szoboszlai. Is the defence just fixture-proof? And if we made a big mistake by not starting with him, I was keen to start with Lewis Skelly at the start of the season, but obviously become a bit of a doubt in the pre-season that he would actually end up starting the games. Calafiori ended up starting, but I wasn't set that he would start every game. He's starting every game. Timber, apart from that first game when Ben White started, has been starting every game. So maybe it's time to adjust our thoughts with Calafiori and Timber. There might be a lot less rotation than expected. Maybe they are better picks, and maybe Man City isn't the worst game to still go for it if you want to get them in before price rises. On paper, it is possibly the worst game, I think, but 30% clean sheet odds, or around the 30% mark across different projection models. I think 11FI was about 33. I think Rob T was 30. There's still a lot of backing for the Arsenal defence. I don't mind the idea of eating humble pie and going for Calafiori this week. Timber still starts to look a little bit expensive. Mosquera, I think there is now doubts, despite how good he's been, when Saliba comes back in. So I think it probably is 2 of the fullbacks. Gabriel is the guy that's nailed, but again, I think I would just rather, if Calafiori is going to carry on playing the minutes, go for the cheaper alternative. You know, the minute I do that, Calafiori will get a bench in though. Trossard and Martinelli, they would be the 2 that I would punt on. If you did want to try and get lucky in that Port Vale match, I think they are the 2 that would possibly be the most likely to get minutes as normal. I'm not really sure who would start in the striker position against Port Vale, and seeing as Marino's getting so many minutes in the Premier League and the other competitions, maybe it's Trossard at the 9, Martinelli on the left potentially. I do think Dalman will play on the right-hand side, and I do think Nwaneri will sort of play in that sort of attacking midfield role. So I think Trossard, Martinelli, you know that even if they don't start, they're going to come on and they're going to probably have an impact. And then the stab at Port Vale. On to Newcastle. So again, they have got a Champions League match still to play this evening. Decent enough depth, I think, for the Carabao Cup match. So I don't think you can particularly target that one. It's Bournemouth away and Bradford at home this week. Walter Marde, 4 million. Debut goal for him. He got reduced minutes, a bit similar to the amount that Gyökeres played. So 65 minutes. I think they're going to just be building him up and getting him used to the intensity of the Prem. And he is going to be needed because Visser is out until after the international break, which falls at the end of game week 7. So I think they are going to have to protect Walter Marde. I think the winger spots are really difficult to predict at the moment. I wouldn't have expected that Elanga was to be seeing the bench so much. You had Barnes and Murphy starting in this one and doing fairly well. So I think that is a hard one to predict. I would avoid it for now. And then you've got Anthony Gordon, who's going to be returning back soon. So he is actually eligible to play the Bradford Cup game. He can't play Bournemouth, but he can play in the Cup, which could be an interesting punt. And then he was obviously available to play Arsenal at home and Union St. Joire in game week 6. So Gordon could be an outside punt potentially. One thing I did think about, I don't know if it is really a good use of the transfer or the substitution feature. I think if you do go for Anthony Gordon, if he doesn't play the Bournemouth game, which he won't because he's suspended, you could just keep him and have him for Bradford. But I'm assuming after the Bournemouth game, the substitution icon will snap into gear because he hasn't played. And you will be able to have a look at some of the other lineups for the Carabao Cup that come before the Newcastle Carabao Cup game, which would include games like the Liverpool Southampton game, the Chelsea Lincoln game, and the Manchester City Huddersfield game. So if you saw something that you really liked in those ones, you could potentially sub Gordon to one of those guys. Obviously, it's only one fixture, but it could be a really nice one. Or you just wait and try and get Anthony Gordon for the Bradford game, which I don't think is a terrible idea. It's a bit out there, but I don't think I'll do it, but it's an option if you wanted it. Defensively, 3 clean sheets in 4. So again, Newcastle, really solid looking defence this season, but it is 2 tough Prem games, I think, next. Bournemouth away and Arsenal at home. And then when you look at Bradford and look at the bench, you've got Botman there, you've got Thiaw there, you've got Lewis Hall there and Kraft there. So you could potentially, I know it's not essentially a back 4, but you've got 4 really good defenders there and maybe one of the starting ones from the Prem start. So I think I'd avoid it this week. I'm keeping an eye still on Lewis Hall because while all these other players are keeping clean sheets and going up in price, he's getting next to no minutes, dropping or staying the same. So 3.9 for Hall still looks like a really nice price when he does finally break back into the team. But with Trippier still playing as well as he's doing, it might just be a bit further away. Disappointing week for Chelsea. So maybe Maresca underestimated Brentford a little bit and had one eye on Bayern Munich in midweek, which you just can't do in the Premier League. So he rotated a fair bit at the back. It wasn't sort of wholesale changes, but Fofana came into the team. You had Hato came into the team. Buonanotte got a first start. You had Gittins starting this one as well. There were a few changes in the team, and there were a few eyebrows raised, especially for those that bought, say, Augusto into their team. Cucurella on the bench, big surprise. James and Gusto also rested. So maybe something we have to keep an eye on. I mean, maybe it didn't work because they then went on to lose against Bayern Munich quite heavily. So maybe Maresca says, I won't do that again. But maybe we do have to consider ahead of some of these big Champions League games or big Prem games, Maresca may rotate a little bit in the game before it. So defensively, some of our options may not be as safe as we thought. Cole Palmer, though, really happy with how this turned out. So some of us might have started to think that we'd been wasting our substitutions, trying to keep him in our team, ready for when he comes back fit. But he finally did come back fit and firing. So he didn't start the Brentford game, but due to the sort of game state and Chelsea struggling in that match, they did bring Palmer on in this one. Only played the 34 minutes, but grabbed a goal. He had 2 shots on target, and he did look pretty good. And then the start against Bayern Munich. So again, grabbing a goal in this one. He went on to score again, but it was disallowed. Big chance created as well. So really solid week for Cole Palmer. 19 points and kind of feel a bit justified in keeping him. But again, I can understand why people just said, I'm not using the sub. I'm going to take him out until we know he's back. It didn't look like the best week for him this week, but it really, has been a big swing of points there. So Cole Palmer, 5.7. I don't even think it's the best week to bring him back in. Manchester United away, doesn't play Lincoln, I don't think. There was reports that he was also holding his groin, which was the injury that he struggled with. But I think Maresca seemed to think that he sounded like he would be okay. So maybe slight doubts. I think if I didn't have Palmer, and I know it's easy to say when you have him, but I think I probably would just maybe look at 6. Maybe look at 6 and think, can I get him in by game week 6? Brighton at home, Benfica at home. But I completely understand if you want to get him in early, get the price rise. And United didn't look very secure at the back against Man City. So Palmer, definitely someone that you could consider if you haven't got him already. But I do think you can probably go out without for one more week. João Pedro, I'm really happy to have brought him in a couple of weeks ago. So 5th return of the season with an assist against Brentford. It was a fortunate assist, a very quite lucky one, but he does seem to get on the end of stuff a little bit from crosses and corners. So again, just keeps being in the right place, being in the right place at the right time. I think he's a perfectly fine third striker if you've got a Salah and Haaland like me. A bonus tackles against Bayern, so even when he's not getting attacking returns, he's still getting some points. So really like João Pedro. Enzo, if you did go for him last week, got the price rise. He had a really good week previously. He was underwhelming this week, just 4 points and 2 points. Did have a corner that I think ended up hitting the post, which was fairly unlucky. I wouldn't panic. He's still a solid long-term hold. He's still doing all the things that you'd expect of Enzo Fernandez, so I wouldn't panic on having him. And I wouldn't panic on your Chelsea defenders either. It has been a bad week. Obviously, the rotation wasn't great against Brentford, and the performance wasn't great against Brentford. Bayern are Bayern. They can do that against any team. I know firsthand as an Arsenal fan, we've been on the end of some whoopings at Bayern. It can happen against them. I wouldn't be too concerned, but the only downside now is you're staring at sort of some price drops. But I think most of you probably would have bought your Chelsea players in on a rise. So just maybe you could just see that as it equaling out. But yeah, Chalobah, own goal. And I think he finished up the game week on a -2. Aston Villa. So this is going to be the struggle of the week, or the tough decision to make of the week, because they've got the fixture. They've got the double fixture of Sunderland, Bologna. They've also got the good long-term fixtures of Fulham, Feyenoord, and Burnley at home. But not scoring any goals. They are not scoring any goals. Their key men are not really getting any points. So what do we do? 0-0 against Everton was their fourth game with no goal. But they did get a goal in the Carabao defeat to Brentford from new signing Harvey Elliott. I've got on the screen the FF Stuff Match Centre. I've done the Everton game because there was quite a lot of rotation in that second one. Cash and Konsa in defence started both. I think they are solid options for this game week if you're looking for defenders. Konsa 3.7 would be the one that I prefer, but Matty Cash has still been solid at 3.5. So Konsa 7 ppm and 9 ppm. So 3 bonus in one of them, 1 bonus in the other, but very, very close to getting 3 bonus in both games. And that has been a consistent thing over the last couple of seasons on Dream Team. So I think Konsa, very solid pick. Still, if you wanted to go for a defender and someone that's probably going to get a decent price rise this week. Matty Cash will be the more attacking. So Konsa is pretty much, I mean, he can get the odd goal, but he pretty much will be just bonus and clean sheets. Whereas Matty Cash tackles, more likely to have attacking threat. I think bombing up the pitch. Now also seems to have added corners to his armoury. He was taking them anyway when Tielemans was on the pitch, but definitely now with Tielemans injured. Cash taking a few more set pieces perhaps. I slightly prefer Konsa's minutes and starts. I've owned Cash a lot of times in Dream Team, and while he's been a fairly solid pick, one that I'd go to again, he has been benched at times, and he does pick up these little injuries at times as well. So I think I would slightly just prefer Konsa. I think Konsa probably starts all of these next 5 matches in a row. So Konsa, Cash, both really good picks. Harvey Elliott was the punt from last week, so he didn't go on to start the first match, but looked promising, I think, when he came on. Gets his first start and gets his first goal. It wasn't a convincing goal, like through the keeper's, straight at the keeper and straight through the keeper's legs, but they all do count. Bonus, 2 shots on target, and I do think he might be fortunate now with that Tielemans injury. That number 10 slot is open for Aston Villa. And I mean, he's got his first goal. He's got the first goal. He's got the only goal for Aston Villa this season. So surely he now starts starting for them. The only question mark would be, is he up to full fitness? Because he only got 19 minutes and he still only got 67 minutes when probably could have stayed on a bit longer in the Carabao Cup. So yeah, maybe a slight minutes doubt, but surely he has to start starting games. So I do like Elliott as a pick this week. But despite the poor form, you've got Watkins and Rodgers. I still prefer these two, I think, as a punt, than going for someone who you think is probably a sub in the Prem and then gets the start in the Carabao. I still just prefer it that way. I think, although they're not in form, the fixtures are there. I feel like they will eventually come back. But I know it is going against what they've done so far this season. So I'm not going to be going for Watkins or Rodgers, I don't think, this week. But I'm just saying I prefer going for a Watkins or Rodgers than potentially like a Martinelli or Trossard, in my opinion. And Watkins may be on pens as well with Tielemans out, and he did slot his one away in the penalty shootout. So possible Aston Villa punts if anyone's feeling a bit daring. 4 clean sheets in a row for Spurs, and they've only conceded 1 goal as well, so similar to Arsenal. Fixture run still going strong as well. I don't think that Brighton away is a particular clean sheet fixture. I think Brighton are still a strong attacking side. I think there will be heavy rotation in the Doncaster match. Looking at the bench, there are plenty of options that they can line up with in that one. But then game week 6 looks good. Wolves at home, Bodo at home. Wouldn't be surprised with 2 clean sheets in those. And then Leeds away in game week 7, I think still looks like a nice fixture. So I think Spurs assets are completely on the table still. And I think the defence is looking more appealing than anywhere else at the moment. Van der Ven, 3.8 million. That's a really nice price. It's hard to get midfielders around that price that look good. He's had a goal. And both centre-backs look a real threat from set pieces. Thomas Frank has definitely brought that sort of set-piece threat with him from Brentford. Romero as well, 3.8. So he's grabbed an assist in that game against West Ham, but he could have had so much more. Robbed of a goal, which I don't think should have been disallowed, to be honest with you. Nice cross from Kudus. It looked like one of the West Ham players pushed Ven into, was it Walker Peters? Which then ended up getting the goal disallowed. So I think it was wrong, but Romero did come back and get an assist with a nice cross to, I think, Bergvall, I think it might have been. So I think Ven and Romero still really nice options. And I don't hate the double up of the Spurs defence, to be honest. Pedro Porro, though, again, I don't think you're going to take him out if you have got him unless you really need the money. But he is starting to be a concern, especially with Ven and Romero doing so well. The problem is with Porro, he's just not getting the bonus points that he was getting last season. He's had no bonus points in 5 starts now, and he has the least amount of player performance marks out of all 4 of their starting defenders. So I think after these games, it is starting to look like a big enough sample size to sort of say that Porro isn't going to be getting bonuses regularly as he was last season. Kudus, talking of bonus, 4.7. So he did get that assist ruled out. It was looking like he was going to have a pretty underwhelming game week, to be honest. But he did end up getting his bonus points upgraded overnight from the Villarreal game. So came with a free bonus. Still an okay game week from him. And this is what you like about Kudus. When he doesn't really have a great game week, he still does come away with points. So 8 points for the game week in a pretty average game week for him. So I still think he's a solid pick. And I still slightly favour him over Xavi Simons. But I must say, Simons has been more impressive than I thought he would be straight out the bat. 7 bonus points from 5 for Kudus, which, again, when you're not on fire, is still a really, really good return. Simons seems to be getting bonus as well. So bonus in both matches. Really nice corners. Spurs have got something going on with Romero and Ven in the box, and Kudus and Simons putting in really nice crosses. Yeah, I think there is opportunities there. 2 starts and impressed so far. I think Simons still a very good pick. And maybe you want to go for the double up, but I still prefer double defence, I think, than double midfield there. I did say I would be concerned in the last episode about that midfield of Spurs with sort of Bergvall. Well, I didn't even mention Bergvall. I said Sarr, Bentancur and Palinha. But Bergvall's come in the mix now as well to that equation. And the reason I was worried was because I thought Xavi Simons, while he can play left, would potentially play in centre attack midfield or 10, whatever you want to call it. But both games, Simons played on the left. And Bergvall's now been thrown into the mix. So 3 returns in this week. I think one of them was pretty lucky. It was a sort of goalkeeper howler. But I'd still be a bit cautious about that midfield of Spurs. I think Kudus, Simons, or either of the 2 centre-backs look like the best picks for me. Nottingham Forest, so back-to-back losses for Ange. The Arsenal one, yeah, didn't really get any time to sort of implement anything, so you can let him off for that one. It was wholesale changes for the Carabao Cup, so getting a good look at all of the players before they go into these European double game weeks. And they lost and went out to Swansea. Some crazy late goal, to be fair, from them. But I don't particularly think that their first 11 is going to be massively different to the one that went out against Arsenal. We'll have to wait and see. Obviously, Zinchenko couldn't play against Arsenal. We'll have to wait and see. There is talk that maybe Zinchenko will get put back into their European lineup because of the Oli Aina injury. But I think we'll see close to two of the strongest lineups that Ange can put out for this double game week. Burnley away and Real Betis away. We still have to wait and see what that lineup will be. But I think Anderson, 3.7, will be one of those who will make the first 11. He is a top player. So 3.7, he's hit tackles in every game so far, sometimes multiple tackle points. He's on corners still, even under Ange. He's had 4 bonus points and 90 minutes in every game. So I think he could be this year's sort of boring Declan Rice, Tielemans style pick, which became really handy in our squads last season when European fixtures were on. So I'm really interested in buying Anderson this week. I think he might make his way into my team. Sells, well, obviously Ange joining, we assume that it'll probably make the defence a lot worse. We don't know for certain that he'll be a double game week keeper under Ange as well, but I don't think the backup goalkeeper Victor sort of gave a good account of himself in the Swansea game, so maybe Sells gets 2. He is 3.2 million. He is going to drop down to, I think, 3 million by next game week. So I think by next game week, I think could be a really nice option, especially if you've, like me, and you've got Roths and he's gone up in value quite heavily. The gap between Sells and Roths, or even Dubravka, Perry, is probably going to be the smallest that it will be this season by next week. So I think that is a really nice upgrade if you are looking to upgrade your goalkeeper. But other than that, I'm not really too interested in going early on any of the other Nottingham Forest players. Or I would rather just let it play out, check out what the best lineup is for Ange in a double game week. And then in game week 6, you've still got Sunderland and Midtjylland. So I think it's not off the table if you wait another week. Igor Jesus got a brace against Swansea, so maybe one to watch for the future. Chris Whittle also only playing 60 minutes, although it was an international break before the Arsenal game, so could have played into it. But yeah, I think Igor Jesus may play his way into that first 11. But other than that, I think I just let it play out. Rest of the rest. Now, I'm not particularly hot on any of these players here, apart from maybe Crystal Palace as a sort of longer term play. But Palace only the single this week, but you could just compare that to the other teams that you think will play a first 11 in the Prem and rotate in midweek. They've got West Ham away from home, which looks like an okay fixture. West Ham's corner defending looking pretty suspect as well. Gay and Richards, I think this was unfortunate. So I ended up going for Lacroix and not Richards. I sort of bottled the Richards move a little bit, thinking that I don't necessarily think he's going to start the Millwall game after the sort of international break he's just had. And I wasn't really sure on Gehi either. I thought I'd rather go for the cheaper alternative in Lacroix. I thought Lacroix was slightly better. So I went for Lacroix over these two. Gehi, well, clean sheet in the first match anyway. All done really, really well. But then the second match, Lacroix gets the start, Gehi gets the start, Richards gets the bench in. Gehi goes off and banks his clean sheet. Richards comes on, scores a goal, and then the clean sheet gets wiped. 90 plus minute. So Lacroix owners ended up with nothing out of that Millwall game. So really, really disappointing. Gehi and Richards do end up probably getting a price rise again this week and coming out on top, while Lacroix probably is going to stay the same, it looks like. But I prefer Lacroix as a pick in the longer term. I think the attacking threat looks good. I think he is one of the more nailed guys there. But I think if you're going into Palace defence this week, there's not enough in it to go Lacroix over the two that get the price rise. So I would go Gehi or Richards personally if you're going in this game week. Wolves, again, there's 2 home fixtures. It's Leeds and Everton, but they've not looked good. Wang would probably be the only option that looks a little bit exciting. But realistically, it's a struggling team. He's the backup striker. He wasn't starting before Strand Larsen's injury. He's had 1 goal, 1 assist, and is the pen taker, but I don't think it's inspiring, to be honest. Everton, by all means, you can hold what you've got. Feels like a fine double game week. I know Liverpool is one of the games which isn't great, but then Wolves fixture looks okay. I don't think there's any guarantee, though. I've got O'Brien and Dewsbury Hall. I don't think they're definitely going to start 2. In fact, I'm doubtful. But I think Grealish and Ndiaye would be the 2 that I'd go for if I wanted to take a punt. Grealish, 5 points this week. Really close to getting free bonus again. And Ndiaye, Moyes said that he had a knock. We now know that Moyes can be a bit tricky. So 4 points for Ndiaye. tackle points and a bonus despite his knock. If you've got Semenyo, Bowen, Bruno, Semenyo was horrible if you took him out this week. Absolutely smashed it. We found out now that suddenly he's the pen taker for Bournemouth as well, even with Evan Nilsson on the pitch. So unfortunate if you did take Semenyo out, but if you kept Semenyo or have Semenyo, you probably just keep him for the one-off single game week because I don't think there's a lot of great options this week. Bowen, Bruno, no real problem to keep hold of them. They do keep getting points for this, that, and the other, but eventually all three of these I still would want to move on to European players. Captaincy this week does feel a bit rubbish. So again, there's no real solid picks for 2 games a week. Villa, you'd think their key players will get 2 matches, so you can go for Ollie Watkins, go against the poor form and just go for the good-looking fixtures and hope he turns it around, maybe on penalties. But yeah, again, not entirely inspiring, but I think he is a shout this game week still. If you're feeling bold, you think they're going to turn it around against Sunderland away and Bologna at home, I think Ollie Watkins is a shout. If you've got Harvey Elliott, maybe you want to hope that he goes for the 2 starts this week. Has got attacking threat, but again, the minutes risk is there potentially. I don't love it. I'm actually looking potentially at Elliot Anderson, which again, it just feels a bit horrible, to be honest with you. I do think he's going to start. I do think he's going to get 2 90s. He does feel quite reliable for getting some points, so I don't think like he'll entirely blank. But if you're willing to maybe get 2 appearance points in each match, maybe get a tackle point in each match, and maybe end up with a bonus point or 3 bonus points across the week, is it best to just get some captaincy points on the board rather than going for a one-off single game week player? Or do you just go with the tried and tested Mohamed Salah against Everton, get the 90 minutes, hope for your pen or hope that his form has turned around, and just think he's 190 out of Salah better than possible sort of 2 90s out of a low ceiling pick in Anderson? Maybe you get lucky with a bench appearance in the Southampton game if you go Salah. Or Haaland. I mean, he keeps scoring against Arsenal last season. I don't think he plays Huddersfield, but maybe you just want to go for the stronger pick with the 90 minutes penalty shout. Cole Palmer against Manchester United. You think that's a dodgy defence last week? Maybe he can do well again against Manchester United this week in a single, but again, don't think he plays Lincoln. Or cut punt, Grealish and die, possibly. But again, I think this week is going to be wide open. I don't think it's a good booster week, in my opinion. There could be an argument if you're not sure on the captaincy to play your max captain. But again, I don't feel like the ceiling is really, really high this week. It doesn't feel like there's going to be many goals in the City-Arsenal game. Maybe the Liverpool game there is. I don't know. I think it's kind of it feels to me like just get a few points on the board from your captaincy, and maybe the best captain ends up with sort of 1 attack in return over the week. But let me know who you're captaining for this game week. Right, here's my team update for this week. So it has been a really solid week for me. I think I was 16k last week. I'm up to 2.2k, but I must say I've had Salah play as my captain, and Haaland still has to play tonight, and I think it's majority captaincy on Haaland. So I do expect my rank to take a bit of a pounding this evening, but I think still it's going to be a relatively solid game week. First thought then, last week was to roll. Maybe that might be changing slightly. So I'm in a good position with a lot of my team looking to get price rises after having a good week. So Roth's again, absolute hero, 10-pointer. Lacroix, despite the disappointing Millwall match, 10 points, clean sheet in the first one. Chalobah, 1 point for the week after that minus points yesterday. So this is a real disappointing one. But typically, if he'd had an okay week this week, I wouldn't have had any problem with keeping Chalobah. But he is due a 0.3 drop now, you'd imagine. O'Brien got the clean sheet, 8 points. Romero, 20 points, which is crazy to say, but that could have been so much more if that goal had still stood. But Romero was the guy I went for instead of Richards in the end. I started to get a bit worried that Richards wouldn't start too, which he didn't, but he still went on to score a goal. But I can't complain. I was never going to go Richards over Lacroix. It was always going to be Lacroix plus Richards, which Romero's got 20 points, so can't complain, and he's a solid long-term pick. Kudus with the 8, Palmer, who I kept, getting 19, which if he hadn't have come on in the Brentford game, I definitely would have just taken him out for Florian Wirtz, I think. So fortunate that he did end up coming on in that Brentford game. Things could have been a lot different. Dewsbury Hall with 2, disappointing. We'll be getting a drop, but potential double next week. Salah with the captaincy, so 2 goals, 1 assist this week. 50 points on the captaincy is insane, really. But Haaland could still beat that, which seems mental. And then Pedro with a solid 11 points. So yeah, I liked the look of having 3 to 4 free transfers for next game week. It's looking more likely that it'll be just 3 potentially this week. What I would say is, I'm trying to, if I am going to make transfers this week, I don't necessarily want them to be just for this week. I want them to be with game week 6 in mind. If I'd have rolled and had 4 transfers for game week 6, when I think the fixtures are a lot better, I don't want the players to be too different to the players that would have bought in game week 6, if that makes sense. So what I'm looking at, this is my team at the moment with no transfers made. So I've got 0.8 in the bank, which I did last week, but my team got a significant boost in team value to up to 51.1, and I've got 0.8 in the bank. I think it's going to be a big week of rises again this week, but I'm looking at Dewsbury Hall, who's set to go down in price, I think 0.2. I'm not convinced that he definitely plays both in the double, which means he could end up with a Liverpool single away, which isn't great. And I really like Elliot Anderson, who I do feel like will get 2 90s this week. So it feels like a no-brainer for me to swap Anderson to Dewsbury Hall this week. Anderson isn't getting a rise, but I think he's a solid pick this week. I think he will outscore Dewsbury Hall, so I'm not worried about making that Anderson to Dewsbury Hall move. That would be the one transfer that I'm looking to make. But then I'm trying to work out what other players I would move. Roofs would have been one of them, or Roofs, but he's getting a 0.3 rise. And the keeper that I'd be looking at would be Sells, who's due to drop 0.2. So I don't think it makes sense to do that move now. That could be one that waits till later. O'Brien would be the other, who I'd look to move out for another European player, but he's due to rise 0.3. I think he then stays. Then the only other thing that I could possibly look to do is take Chalobah out, but I do feel that seems a little bit hasty. If he was just price staying the same, I think I'd just keep him, because this Manchester United away fixture looks okay. And then after that, you've got a double of Brighton and Benfica, both at home, which on paper looks like a fine double as well. The only thing I would sort of think is, who would I want longer term potentially in that, who does have better longer term fixtures? And longer term, it probably would be like an Arsenal defender, if I could fit one of them in. Or, I can't say they were on my radar really before this week, but Konsa could be getting a price rise. He is cheaper, and the fixtures do look better in the longer term. So if either of those options I did go for, Calafiori, I know it's not a great week this week against Man City. I feel like Calafiori's probably just got just as much chance of keeping a clean sheet against City as Chalobah away at United, potentially. And then there is that added into the mix that Maresca does look like he will rotate things a little bit at the back from time to time. So that is an option, maybe Calafiori in for Chalobah, or Konsa potentially into Chalobah. Konsa would give me 0.8 in the bank, whereas Calafiori would give me 0.4 in the bank. But it's just, what do I value more this week? A little bit more information and having free transfers the week after, or just keep on pushing with that price increases and going for a sort of Chalobah or Calafiori or Konsa. I'm not completely sold on that one, but Dewsbury Hall, I'm pretty sure we'll be moving to Anderson this week. That's everything for this episode. So if you've enjoyed it, please do leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and do head over to the Dream Team Tonic podcast. We had a very special guest, George Bristow from GB Fantasy Football, join us on the last episode, who finished 3rd overall on Dream Team last season and makes Dream Team content of his own. So do head over to the Dream Team Tonic podcast, check out that latest episode, and also check out George's channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.